Hello, my friends. I'm Brent Hannafy. You may remember me from a few stories I performed at our beloved Whistle Stop. Or maybe you just recognize me as that white guy outside of Whistle Stop, expecting your $5 donations with what people have described as my smoldering Brentensity.
And I'm Sarah Sharp. I might be recognized for my supportive laughter at Brent's performances, but I'm also a public high school English teacher, and teaching over Zoom is awesome.
We are helping host, produce, and curate tonight's VAMP clip show because So Say We All is going to go through a dramatic overhaul. We're going to give you a brand new website, brand new programming, opportunities for storytellers nationwide to be heard, and we're going to return to live shows safely. But in order to do all of that, we need the entire damn community.
If you want to help storytellers, do what we've done and become a member at the link below. Direct support is the only way that So Say We All can grow and change with the crazy shit that's going on around us. Like bring you the 5 performers that you're going to watch tonight and give you a chance to laugh and relax and maybe forget about the mental health dick punch that we're all taking right now.
So without further ado, let's introduce tonight's performers. We've got Laura Condi, Lisa Howe, Frank DiPalermo, Yesenia Padilluh, and Hannah Grunwald. Performing first is Laura Condi from the February 2014 showcase, Dirty Talk, Volume 3.
So say we all!
I remember the line going silent, and the last thing he said before he hung up was, well, it was fun while it lasted. It was happening. Mike and I were splitting up. Mike was the first guy to ever meet my parents, the first guy I ever saw myself marrying, and the first guy I ever said I love you to. So when we broke up over the phone, I was devastated. Fun while it lasted? This was fun? I thought to myself. Fun? Fun? Fun made it seem like we had what Ralph Macchio and Elizabeth Shue had in The Karate Kid, just like, oh, taking pictures at the mall and fighting off the high school bullies, when we didn't have fun. We had 8 months of epic Gone with the Wind type shit, okay? I didn't handle the breakup very well. One of my coping mechanisms was making jokes, obviously. My other coping mechanism was more dangerous. Instead of the classic move of being taken out by girlfriends to cope with the heartache and get my groove back, I spent many nights alone, shamefully obsessing over dudes on Facebook. When I crush on someone, I crush hard. I crush hard and insanely. Dan Voss was a sad victim of this. He was fucking adorable. He was an LA comedian with a raspy voice and glasses and always sported a plaid shirt over a band tee. In a text to a friend, I referred to him as having a face like Cameron, but a swagger like Ferris. All of that sprinkled with a bit of whimsy and vulnerability as displayed by his owning a cat and being a genuine fan of the band Bright Eyes. I gathered some of this information from meeting him a handful of times, but the majority of it came out of stalking his Facebook every day and listening to, if not memorizing, every podcast he was listed under on iTunes. I stopped thinking about my ex-boyfriend altogether as long as I was checking Dan's online presence every morning, afternoon, evening, lunch break, bathroom break, and traffic stop in my day. Dan was going to be my new boyfriend now, duh. Over time, I would weave an imaginary narrative about his day, his previous relationships, current hopes, fears, dreams, and desires, and then I'd cater them to my own and imagine our lives intertwining. I became obsessive to the point where if I was at the grocery store in the aisle with sliced cheeses, I would ask myself, which cheese would my future boyfriend Dan like? American, probably? No, he seems like more of a provolone dude. Then I'd select a bag of provolone, a cheese that I'd never eaten in my whole life, place it in my basket, and walk away like it was the most normal thought of all time. Sometimes I'd pull away from my crazy tendencies and ask myself if this behavior was normal. Why was I doing this to myself? Could I blame it on my lack of interaction with any other guys? I wasn't going out to bars or contributing in any sort of a social scene. Could I blame it on social media and the convenience of having a single person displayed on an easy-to-navigate web format where I could effortlessly compare his taste to mine and imagine us together so easily 24 hours a day? Could I blame it on the cause of my recent breakup and how I convinced myself that the only man who could ever understand me would have to be a comedian or an artistic type, which was totally Dan Voss, since by process of elimination, he was the only quasi-attractive comedian within 70 miles of me? Or could I just blame it on the fact that Dan Voss was fucking perfect and adorable and specifically manufactured by the heavens as my soulmate? However crazy I was about Dan, it certainly didn't prepare me for what happened next. Little did I know, Dan already had considered a place for me in his life, the friend zone. I realized I was in the friend zone over the course of 3 interactions with Dan. The first was when I emailed him asking if he wanted to grab drinks the next time he was in town, and he never responded to that email. Second was after a show I saw him at in a local bar. I got only a few sentences of conversation in with him, but it seemed to be going well. So when I noticed him saying goodbye to his friends, I came up with an exit strategy. "Oh, are you leaving? I'll walk out with you," I said with my keys in hand. I had seen it in movies 100 times. The walk to the car was always where sparks flew first. We left the building and I started to confidently chat it up with small talk. However, my pre-rehearsed yet breezy banter was cut short when I realized his car was parked way closer than I had planned. Like ridiculously close. Like 6 feet from the bar. "Oh, you're parked right here? Awesome. Well, it was good seeing you." And before I knew it, he was in his car driving away. And then I cussed myself out on the way to my car that I strategically parked 4 blocks away. Why 4 blocks? Because I imagined it would make for a long romantic walk where he could get to know me and my current hopes, fears, dreams, and desires if he only wasn't parked in a spot 6 feet away from the bar. It all came to an end, sadly, on a rainy November night in LA. I was visiting Hollywood. I was visiting some friends in Hollywood and had planned to stop by the show he ran in a theater downtown. Totally casual, I told myself, like I was already in the neighborhood. Yet, in reality, I was a good 40 minutes away. As I walked into the theater, I tried to push fantasies out of my mind. Fantasies involving us laughing the night away in some late-night nearby diner where he'd savagely fall in love with me over a plate of pancakes. I spotted him leaning against the wall in the hallway at the edge of the audience, and I approached him quietly while the show was going on. "Hi," I whispered. He looked confused, then realized who I was, and said, "Oh, hi," back, and an awkward half-hug commenced. I said it was good to see him. He nodded and then stepped back watching the show. Not exactly hitting it off so far. I tried to initiate a conversation, but his attention was taken away by others in the hallway. I tried again to initiate a convo, once again derailed by others. And then I noticed him looking and waving and making gestures to another girl across the theater. I was starting to feel like seeing me wasn't a priority for him. And my plan, which I so confidently believed in for so long, started to feel embarrassing. I stood there quietly alone in the hallway, occasionally watching the show, occasionally checking my phone for no reason, but feeling super awkward and trying to not look completely desperate the whole time. Then Dan approached me. "Hey, this is gonna sound weird, but would you mind doing me a favor?" Now, in my state of desperation, any interaction with him was considered progress, but doing him a favor wasn't quite the execution I had planned for us being together forever. I was looking more for a flirty, compliment of my outfit or a grasp of my arm, not a, "Hey, sorry to bug you, but please help me with some sort of task, you human who seems capable of doing tasks." And ultimately, upon hearing that he needed a favor, it was hard for me to keep from screaming, "If the favor is to be your girlfriend forever, but of course, don't be silly." He started to explain himself. So normally we have someone working our merch table, but she's not here. I have to leave and close out the show, but do you mind watching the merch table so nobody takes our stuff? Now, in my years of going to concerts and festivals, I've studied the social and interpersonal dynamics of tending to a merch table. And I've noticed how the people working merch tables are usually younger girls, sometimes quiet or awkward. Basically, it's a job given to the creature lowest on the entertainment food chain, fangirls. Girls who want to be close to the band, but the band doesn't necessarily want to be close to them, so they stick them by their merch and have them do their dirty work. So when Dan Vost asked me to watch his merch table, he not only locked me in the friend zone, but he christened me with the extra special title of fangirl. I stared at him confused with my mouth open, but no words coming out. I know it's a weird request, he said, but I'll give you a free shirt. What the fuck was happening? This was not the fairy tale moment I was planning for. This was some cold, hard friend zone shit. This was some I'm not interested in you in that way, so could you do me a favor and watch my stuff shit? And for a free shirt? Oh, let me guess what it says. I pined over Dan Voss for months until he put me in the friend zone and all I got was this lousy t-shirt? But I didn't know how to say no. So he led me over to the merch table and said he'd be back shortly. I watched Dan walk away, and I was left waiting in a huge lobby filled with only 3 people. I felt frantic standing there. I began shifting my weight, moving my arms, checking my phone, putting away my phone, checking my phone again, anything to try and find a stance that didn't look like I just had my crazy little heart ripped out and assigned to merch table duty. Minutes later, people began exiting the theater and pouring into the lobby. With no specific instructions left for me, I basically stood there quietly, giving the stink eye to anyone who came near me. I searched the crowd for Dan and saw him talking to the girl that he was previously talking to across the theater. And with that, I knew it was over. The writing was on the wall. It was hopeless. I felt pathetic and alone. And for the first time in months, I thought about Mike. And I remembered how it ended on the phone. I wondered where he was and if he was somewhere making a fool out of himself the same way I was, all in an attempt to try and avoid dealing with the pain of our breakup. I had never let myself let go of Mike. I had bypassed that typical breakup pain you're supposed to feel. I instead found Dan on Facebook, manifested him into my new imaginary boyfriend, and used that as the tourniquet to the bloody wound that was my breakup. I didn't want to face the colorless timeline of comprehension it takes to actually get over someone you've loved and the grayness of it all. Moments later, Dan made his way over behind the table and started shuffling through boxes. With my face turned away, stuck in a depressed thought of Mike, I heard Dan call my last name. Condi, my last name, which, for the record, if you're calling me by my last name, I get it. That means you don't want to have sex with me. And then he underhand tossed me a shirt, my penance for approximately 12 minutes of watching the merch table. And this was no ordinary toss. As the shirt met my face, it felt as though he was a Little League coach telling me to get off the field. I had given it my best, but this game was not to be won, so better throw in the towel, Condi. I survived the 2-hour drive back to San Diego in the rain, with the Postal Service's The District Sleeps Alone playing on repeat the whole time. It was your typical cliche, sad, mopey anthem, but I needed a song like that. It was long overdue. Dan Voss rejecting me seemed heartbreaking, but really, I had some previous heartache to attend to. I had to let myself cope with my breakup from Mike. So, obviously, it was time to stalk his Facebook and obsess on a picture of him with his new girlfriend. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Laura Condi.
And that was Laura Condi, everyone. Thank you, Laura.
Up next is Lisa Howe from our 2019 October Showcase Extra.
So say we all.
Until I was 38 years old, I peed my pants anytime I laughed. Only when I laughed, not when I coughed or jumped or sneezed. I spent my entire life trying to cover this up and failing. I couldn't stop laughing, and when I laughed, I couldn't stop from peeing. And it wasn't like I just leaked a little urine. It was full bladder emptying. I had no control over it, and every day it would happen again and again, leaving me in a deep spiral of shame. I worked furiously to convince myself that it wasn't that big of a deal, fooling myself into thinking that no one else noticed. Growing up, my accidents weren't discussed in my family. My parents simultaneously pretended it didn't happen, and they blamed me for it. They never took me to the doctor. My mother could shame you with just a sigh. My father would drop his head in his hands, and the message was clear. Jesus Christ, this again? I felt like it was my fault. One of the stories my parents like to tell about my childhood is how interested I was in bathrooms. Wherever we were, I wanted to know where the bathroom was. They missed or ignored the real reason for my interest, instead laughing about how weird I was. Have you ever known a kid so obsessed with bathrooms? I would try to pee constantly, hoping it wouldn't happen again. But it didn't fix the problem, and then I had to go back to those bathrooms again to clean myself up, literally marinating in my own pee, warm, then cold and pungent. I started padding my underwear with toilet paper as far back as I can remember. I thought I had it down to a science. Who was I going to be with? How funny were they? How funny was I with them? But despite my calculations, it was never enough. The efforts to conceal were intense and endless. I always had one of my many sweatshirts with me to wrap around my waist after the inevitable accident. I grew up in Santee, and even when it was 100 degrees in the summer, I carried one with me in case I get cold. When I consider my lifetime's worth of friends' couches, beds, and rugs I tried to surreptitiously clean up, I feel exhausted. Attempting to keep a secret that big for so long, a secret that impacted my daily life, was a heavy burden for a child. The persistent anxiety created by the fear of being found out had an impact on every part of my life. All I wanted was to be the same as the other kids without having to take daily preventative measures to conceal a problem that would make me a social pariah. As I entered puberty, I was even more self-conscious. New smells and changes to my body only intensified my worry. I started drinking gallons of water to dilute my urine. My youth group leader nicknamed me Camel because I guzzled so much water and never went to the bathroom. Oh, youth group leader Stephanie, I went to the bathroom all the time. It was just in my pants. The positive about puberty was the introduction of maxi pads, which replaced my toilet paper padded panties. Then I just had to explain why I constantly had to change my pad. Who has their period every single day of the month? I was always full of fear that someone would notice, but also convinced that no one knew. Denial is incredibly powerful. It feels so real. If I'm pretending it's not happening, then other people must be in the dark too. The thing about denial is its power doesn't extend to others. They see things clearly. When I was 19, my best friend at the time, Jessica, called me out. We were headed to Tijuana to party for the night. We were already drunk. Jessica and I bounced around without seatbelts, laughing hysterically. I was wearing a mesh black shirt with a black bra underneath and a teeny tiny skirt. I didn't have anywhere to hide. I just had a little accident. She stared at me with a look reminiscent of my father's and said, "That happens all the time." I felt the heat of shame come over my face, and I felt like I was in trouble yet again. But that was it. We never spoke of it again. It was my fault. I carried the deception on for many more years after that. One of the reasons I knew I would marry the man who became my husband is because I told him the truth about it. He was the first person I told. He really saw me, and it felt so glorious that I wanted to share all of me. Scott urged me to go to a doctor. I was hopeful for a solution when I saw a young urologist. She was soothing, and her demeanor was calm. She sat down and looked me in the eye, assuring me lots of women have urinary incontinence. She said, I know this is hard to talk about. She put me through a battery of tests, which all turned up normal. They were so demoralizing. One of them included me drinking a ton of water and then having to sit on a toilet in a lab while she and an assistant watched to see if I could lose control of my bladder. Of course, there was not anything funny about what was happening. So nothing happened. I told her over and over again, it only happens when I laugh. She kept side-eyeing me through the appointment. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head. Is this woman for real? Eventually, she ended the appointments telling me, there's no problem, best of luck and all that. So much for the empathy. After being persuaded to see someone and sharing the most shameful part of my life, I was dismissed. I sobbed the entire drive home and refused to talk about it with Scott. I was done getting help. A few years later, after I had my daughter, a good friend told me she was having her bladder fixed. She said, after 4 kids, I'd like to be able to cough without peeing myself. So I asked her for the name of her doctor, and I carried the card around with me for months. At that point, I was 37 years old, and the secret and my rituals around it were a part of me. One night, Scott and I were goofing around. I was making up a song and dance in the living room, as I do nightly during our nightly jocularity hour. And I started laughing at my own ridiculousness. I emptied my entire bladder on our new bamboo floors and collapsed into tears. He ran over and held me in a puddle of my urine and humiliation. The next day, I decided to call the number on the card I'd looked at 1,000,000 times. Within 5 minutes of meeting and talking to me, the soft-spoken doctor, old enough to be my grandpa, said, "You have giggle incontinence." I looked at him and started to laugh. But only for a second, lest I demonstrate my issue on his exam table. "Did you just make that up right now?" He smiled, saying, "There isn't really any research in it in adults because it's so rare. But it's not your fault." It was not my fault. He offered Ritalin, which works in children with giggle incontinence. As someone in recovery without ADD, a stimulant seemed like a bad idea. So I was back to square one. But at least I had a name for my problem, as absurd as it was. 6 months later, I decided to go to the best urologist in town. When Dr. Nager walked into the room and introduced himself by his first name, I fell in love with his kind, warm approach. It was nothing like the first time. I asked him if he was going to make me repeat those humiliating tests like the other doctor. He said, "Why would I do that to you?" He told me he had only seen one other adult patient with giggle incontinence in his 30 years of practice, but he would do everything he could to help me. He told me it wasn't my fault. Dr. Nager suggested an outpatient minor surgery, but with the caveat that in my particular case, there was only a 60% chance of it working. I said yes immediately. After 38 years, there was a possible solution. I would have taken a 10% chance at that point. I was willing to do anything to make it all go away. As soon as I got home from the surgery, I told Scott, "Make me laugh." I did not pee my pants. I started crying. Scott started crying. We tested it for hours. I started crying. Scott started crying. We tested it for hours. He danced for me. He told me terrible dad jokes. He showed me my favorite memes. He dressed up. He showed me clips of the movie Bridesmaids. I would laugh and then cry when I didn't pee. I send Dr. Nager a card every year on the anniversary of my surgery. There are not enough thank yous in the world. When I told my mother, she said, "I'm sorry we didn't take your problem more seriously. I just thought you needed to go to the bathroom more." She's also a master at hiding things, the truth, responsibility, and authentic apology. After a lifetime of blaming and shaming me, even when she found out it was a medical condition, she still isn't able to demonstrate any empathy. She just doesn't have it to give. Even though the doctor fixed my problem in just a few hours, the scars of it remain. I still take a sweater everywhere I go, and I still stand a lot just in case. 5 years of freedom haven't yet made up for 38 years of hiding. I've signed up for stand-up comedy classes, a hobby unthinkable for someone with giggle incontinence. But I don't pee when I laugh anymore. And I've got lots of time now that I don't have so much fucking laundry.
That was the awesome Lisa Howe. I know you all miss stories like that. I certainly do too. But Last Call is not forever. The stories are going to come back. The mic's once again going to be yours. So thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for becoming a member. And let's introduce our next storyteller tonight, Frank DiPalermo, from the November 2019 showcase, Safe Harbor.
So say we all.
So I'm 5 years old, and I discover a new superhero. Aquaman breathes underwater, communicates telepathically with fish, and best of all, he is friends with dolphins. This is so amazing that I decide to become Aquaman. Only not exactly. The superhero I become has dark, wavy hair, gets to eat spaghetti and meatballs for dinner every night, and has a different name. I go running into the kitchen. "Mommy, Mommy, I'm Seaman!" Don't ever say that again. What? No, I'm Seaman. Oh, honey. I need at least 15 years before we have this conversation. So Mom is being weird. And apparently she's a drag queen. But that night, I lie in bed and I close my eyes as tight as I can. And I concentrate as hard as I have ever concentrated. I send my thoughts telepathically to all my dolphin friends, Coral, and Seafoam, and Tidal Wave, and Dennis. I say, guys, we're going to Jones Beach tomorrow. Why don't you meet me there? It will be so fun. I mean, we can swim and play tag and hide and seek, and maybe, I could ride one of you for a little bit? What do you say? And I absolutely 100% know that my telepathy worked because my dolphin friends answer me. Yes, we'd love to play with you. We can't wait. Hurry, come soon. So the next morning I go to Jones Beach with my family. I get out of the car, I breathe in that briny air. I feel a bit of the spray and the breeze and the warm sun on my shoulders. I run to the water, and there are seashells and sandpipers and beach glass and driftwood and so many amazing things. But there are no dolphins. I wade into the water looking for them. I cut my foot on a razor clam. Bummer. So this is way before dolphins attained celebrity status. In the 70s and 80s, thousands of dolphins drown in tuna nets, and hardly anyone gives a shit. But to me, these creatures are pure magic. And that magic grows as I learn about them. In high school biology, I learned that dolphins are only ever half asleep. The right side of their brain slumbers, but the left side stays awake to watch for predators and to remind them to swim to the surface and take a breath. After a while, bloop, the sides switch. The left side goes to sleep and the right side stands guard. I'm sorry, that is so cool! I never stopped being seaman. And I never lose my fantasy of swimming with dolphins, not for 1 second. In my 20s, I fall in love with this wonderful man named Scott. We decide to vacation on the big island of Hawaii. One of the hotels there has a dolphin program. Dolphin program. Basically, you get to pay a bunch of money and hang out with Flipper, which you can do like in Tijuana now, but at that time, only a few places in the world do it. And the program is so popular, they have a lottery every day. Sometimes more than 100 people sign up, but only 10 get picked. You put your name in the bowl in the morning, and when you have to be there at noon when they do the drawing, or your spot goes to someone else. This is not an opportunity Seaman is willing to pass up. My wonderful boyfriend, Scott, is not so sure. I mean, he's not like against dolphins or anything, but he often sees things a lot more clearly than I do, which sucks. But he indulges me. In the morning after we arrive in Hawaii, Scott and I go sign up. Man, the pathway to the dolphin habitat is paved with these mossy stones. Huge tumbles of lava rock are on either side, and sprouting out of the rock are these strange, gorgeous plants with these waxy blooms that look like they might have come from the planet Mars. The air is balmy and sweet with the smell of plumeria. The sign-up is in a small office right next to the dolphins, and there's a waterfall, a freaking waterfall, spilling right into the dolphin habitat. Bamboo arches gracefully over the water. There are palm trees everywhere. Every bit of it is stunningly beautiful. And every bit of it is fake. Well, don't get me wrong. The blooms, the bamboo, the palm trees, that's real stuff, but it's all arranged in a certain way. It's all presented in a certain way. The dolphin habitat is a fraud. Even the name, it's not a habitat, it's a pool. Now, Seaman knows at a glance that the dolphins in that pool are Atlantic dolphins. Now think about that. I'm on an island in the middle of the Pacific, and the dolphins in this program come from a whole different ocean. I asked Tiffany, the suntanned blonde woman behind the counter, about this. Tiffany is very perky. We use Atlantic dolphins in our program because they thrive in captivity. I'm not sure I agree. The dolphin pool is gated, so I can see but can't get close. All the animals are clustered together as far from people as they can possibly get. One keeps slapping the surface of the water with its tail fin over and over in a way that seems compulsive and unwholesome. The dorsal fins just kind of flop to the side. The water is murky and brownish. My boyfriend Scott asks, "Why is the water so dirty?" "It's hard to keep the water sparkling when you have dolphins in captivity." Scott mutters, "Then maybe you shouldn't have dolphins in captivity?" I elbow Scott in the ribs. Because, okay, I get it. The dolphins don't seem happy. In fact, they're kind of prisoners. if they interact with me, it will only be because they'll get a reward at the end. It's dolphin prostitution. And if I do this, I will be a Dolphin John. But more than that, I'll be supporting a money-making venture that exploits these animals that I love. But I want to swim with the dolphin so fucking bad! And in the secret chamber of my heart, I believe that I'm special. As soon as I'm in the water, those dolphins are going to recognize my specialness, and we are going to play tag and hide and seek, and one of them's going to give me a ride. No kidding. A little sliver of me actually believes this. So I put my name in the bowl and figure I'll wrestle with the ethics if I get drawn. We decide to spend the rest of the morning at Kealakekua Bay. There's this hilarious sign on the trail leading down to the beach that says, "Shark repellent recommended for all swimmers." Scott blows by it like nothing. Holy shit, Scott, did you just see that sign? It's a joke, it's fine. Why would you think that's a joke? Because there's no such thing as shark repellent? What would that even be? I don't know, Tabasco sauce? We get to the beach, and Scott decides to hang out on the shore. But that water calls to me. Turquoise blue, with the sun glinting off it. And people in the water are hooting and hollering and having more fun than is legal in the state of Utah. I put on my mask and snorkel and jump in, and as soon as I put my face in the water, I see a huma huma nuku nuku apua'a. Which is the Hawaii state fish. Seaman knows these things. It also happens to be gorgeous. It's black and tan and white with little bits of electric blue, and it kind of looks like it's wearing a Lone Ranger mask. I swim out to a little reef, and life is festooned everywhere. There's elkhorn coral, brain coral, fire coral, all kinds of coral. And there are these tiny little shrimp hanging out in little nooks and under rocks. There are gorgeous fish with black bodies that are trimmed in yellow, and there are many schools of little blue fish hanging out like shifting clouds over the reef. It's all so beautiful, it's overwhelming. And yet all I can think is more. And I don't even know exactly what I mean by more. I guess it's not so much that this fish is beautiful or that fish is beautiful, it's that the ocean itself is beautiful. I'm floating in this great engine that is churning with life, and more life. And I want to swallow it. I want to wrap my arms around it. And since I can't do either of those things, I want to be out in the fucking middle of it. I want to be right in the middle. So I turn away from the reef and away from the shore, and I start to swim across the bay, a distance of a little more than a mile. I still have my mask and snorkel, so I can see rays passing under me. An ocean-going triggerfish. An albatross skims just above the surface of the water, and out here, the ocean is deeper, so it's not turquoise anymore. It's sapphire blue. And the sun, passing through the water, makes a shifting web of light that is everywhere, all around me. And by now, I've been swimming for a while, and I realize that if I'm going to make it back to the hotel with the dolphin program by noon, I need to turn around. And I decide, fuck that dolphin prison camp. This is better. This is better. And I realized something else too. If you are out in the middle of Kealakekua Bay on a gorgeous day all by yourself and you are wearing a bathing suit, you are overdressed. So I take off my bathing suit and I put it around my neck. Now, as I swim in that gorgeous warm water, it caresses every single part of me, and I just can't help it. I get a big old boner. And as I swim, I think, I'm kind of fucking the ocean. And I don't mean to brag, but the ocean is digging it. But here's the truth. It is bliss. It is pure bliss. Then, I look through the water, and in the distance, I see a silhouette of a fish with the dorsal fin sticking straight up out of its back. There's no question in my mind what it is. Fucking A. The sign wasn't kidding, and I have no shark repellent. So I do the only thing I can think of. I put my bathing suit back on. But hey, it's a big ocean. There was plenty of room. The shark's going about her business, I'm going about mine. I'm cool, she's cool, everybody's cool. I swim a little bit further and holy shit, the silhouette of another shark. But they're really far away. I mean, they're right on the edge of where I can see them. I don't know, maybe sharks are nearsighted. Maybe they can't see me at all. I swim maybe one more stroke and I see the silhouette of another shark. And another, and another, and another. Eventually, I count 11 sharks. My balls drop so tight, I swear to God, I can feel them in the back of my throat. Even in that warm water, every bit of me breaks out in goose flesh. And then they start swimming toward me. This is such a fucking bummer. I mean, here I am having so much fun on this beautiful day, swimming in this gorgeous water, and I have this oceanic boner. And now I'm gonna be eaten? I mean, it really looks that way because I'm really far from shore. There's no one anywhere near me. I'm doomed. I stop swimming, I look through the water, and I wait to die, I guess. There comes this moment when the sharks stop being silhouettes. They resolve into these powerful creatures barreling toward me, and I realize they aren't sharks. Dolphins. And I'm seaman, so I know that these are Pacific white-sided dolphins, and they are in their home. I am their guest. They swirl around underneath me, and they play, and they dance, and they sing. Oh man, the whole ocean is alive with chirps and whistles and clicks. And I don't mean to talk out of school, but two of them are fucking like crazy while they swim. And every once in a while, a third one kind of drops down to check them out, like, hey, how's everybody doing? Anybody need a hand? These dolphins, it could be anywhere in the whole wide world, in the whole wide, beautiful ocean. And for a little while, they choose to hang out with me. I don't know how long they stay. It feels like 5 seconds, and it feels like half my life, both at the same time. Then they leave. Because they want to. I wave goodbye. And for a while I float. Just float. What happened wasn't arranged. It wasn't presented. It wasn't fake in any way. It was real, mighty real. And real is enough. Real is better. Thank you.
Hey, quick question. Ever tried to rub one out in a honey bucket in 120-degree heat while serving in Ramadi?
Ever serve under Don't Ask, Don't Tell as a gay man and forced yourself to have coitus with a woman service member just to survive?
Did you ever serve in the Coast Guard and seize 12 tons of cocaine off a homemade submarine drifting in open waters and didn't snort any of it?
Did you ever almost blow the front half of your boat and everyone on it into a pink mist because the 5-inch gun misfired a 70-pound shell during a training exercise?
Did a shopkeeper in Thailand ever insist you buy his baby elephant and you couldn't stop thinking about what a nice metaphor that was for the elephant in the room back home named Jody?
Did you ever smoke weed with the Taliban and make a deal with them that if they'd stop planning IEDs in your AO, you'd make sure your POS PFCs would stop zip tying their BFFs?
Did you ever serve in a mess hall with a chef who, allegedly, had sexual relations with the very beef he was about to serve the entire crew?
Have you ever said to yourself, no, I should really not accept the advances of my superior officer, and then said, yes, I really should?
Did you ever spend nearly $20,000 of your own money to make sure the cute little kitten you met on Kandahar Air Base came home when you did?
Were you ever playing a game of Trivial Pursuit in Iraq one day to learn that 50% of gas masks fail when tested, only to wake up the next day and find out that you were invading Iraq?
Did you ever take somebody to bed overseas who you wouldn't have so much as invited up for a cup of tea back home, but you did because you wanted to feel a human connection, and now you have an amazing 11-year-old asking questions?
Did you ever think, well, I can top that story?
Bet you could.
Bet you could.
I'm Justin Hudnall, Executive Director at So Say We All.
I'm Jennifer Corley, Program Director.
And we want to tell you about the Veteran Writers Division.
Hold on to your junk with one hand and grab a pen with the other.
First off, the Veteran Writers Division gives veterans, active duty military, and veteran family members free one-on-one story coaching for any true story you send to us. We don't care what you want to write about. Anything goes. The out there, the banal, the holy crap. But our specialty is nonfiction, so it's got to be true.
Once we get our mitts on that first draft, we help you take it to the next level with professional editing. We can help point you to journals, magazines, and more that are looking for what you're writing. Or maybe you just want to write for yourself and don't have an end goal just yet. Whatever you want your writing to be, we want to meet you there. You'll also get to receive and give feedback to other veteran writers in a cohort. You'll help each other work on your stories, and if you're up for it, perform together.
We also produce live showcases in super fun venues where you and your cohort can perform your stories live in front of an adoring audience. We'll pair you with a performance coach to make sure that not only do you not have a drop of stage fright left in your body, but once you kill it on the microphone, you get carried off on the shoulders like the Super Chiefs you are.
I'm also the editor of Incoming, So Say We All's NPR radio program that brings the world the true stories of the military community, told in their own words, straight from their own mouths. We get to make awesome radio out of stories and interviews from every corner of military and veteran life. Big-named authors, journalists, policymakers, but the real meat and potatoes of who we get to work with is brand new writers. Unexpected and surprising voices who you've never heard from before.
Veterans are talked about more than they're heard directly from, and we need you to help us change that.
Just look for Incoming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts, and see for yourself what you can get up to.
If you have a story you'd like us to workshop with you, go to SoSayWeAllOnline.com and click on Submit. You'll read our Big Kid Rules and see the Veteran Writers Division tab right there waiting for you.
If you want to listen to all of our prior Incoming episodes in one neat place and watch videos of our past live performances, go to incomingradio.org.
If all else fails, just get your hands out of your pockets and email us, info@SoSayWeAllOnline.com. Don't wait for perfection. Send us whatever you got. Quit waiting around. Make some friends. We want to meet you.
Hi, I'm not Brent. In fact, I'm Victoria Leva, and this is Sasquatch. You might know me from the filthy stories I like to tell at Whistle Stop. You might think my mom might be ashamed of those stories, but in reality, she lives for that shit. Don't make my mom sad. Please become a member at the link below. While you're doing that, enjoy our next storyteller, Yesenia Padilluh, at Whistle Stop in November 2010 for our VAMP storytelling showcase, Trouble with Authority. Here's Yesenia.
Joey, hey, get up! Joey sighed deeply, his long brown hair sticking every which way on the pillow, eyes turned to me, still closed. The waning mid-afternoon sun slid its way through the vertical blinds and made a last-ditch effort to light patterns on Joey's bedspread. ¿Qué onda? He muttered, obviously not quite ready to quit the post-coital coma. I nudged him again, harder this time. Get up! I want to figure out what we're doing tonight. It was Friday, April 13th, 2007, and like almost every other Friday, Joey picked me up from my dorm room in La Jolla and drove me down to his Normal Heights apartment where I'd spend the weekend, which usually consisted of sex, maybe going to see a movie, sex, maybe a bike ride or a drive, always followed by sex. Joey quickly found out that being 24 with a 20-year-old as your partner drastically limited nightlife in San Diego, but for some reason, I never heard a complaint. Okay, what do you want to do? Well, I was thinking we could head back to campus for a poetry reading my professor's doing. I think that'd be cool. Okay, that sounds cool. But first, I said, maybe we could go to Reclaim the Streets? No. Oh, come on, it'll be fun. And anyway, you talk about anarchism all the time. Here's your chance to live it. Joey was a vegan anarchist, a strict vegan anarcho-syndicalist, to be precise. And a damn proud one at that. Our very first conversation consisted of him berating my concession-based, privileged Bay Area liberal Democrat politics, deeming them absolutely worthless. I was angry. I was insulted. But I was intrigued. I wanted what he was preaching. A world without bosses, without classes, without borders. Elected officials couldn't possibly represent me because they weren't me. Joey awoke in me a desire to completely rethink my Pledge of Allegiance and realize that when Woody Guthrie wrote, "This land is your land," he wasn't talking to corporations or the government. He was talking to people like me. I'd stay up all night rapt, listening to Joey give a diatribe contrasting Marx and Bakunin or giving his opinion of Chomsky on anarchism. I felt alive, excited, aroused by it all. I wanted a revolution, and I wanted it now. Reclaim the Streets, a non-sanctioned, permit-free demonstration in the name of collective ownership of public space, seemed like the easiest way to enact these desires without stirring up too much trouble. Come on, Joey, I wheedled. We'll be a 2-person black bloc. We'll show up, have a good time, then head to La Jolla. Please? I don't know. If you want to go, I'll go. I have a bad feeling about it. What's the problem? It's basically a party. I don't know. I just feel like trouble has a way of finding me at these sorts of things. Joey's tendency to agitate within direct action situations, or fuck shit up, as he often said, was well known. One of the first things that drew me to him. It was endearing in a frustrating and really stressful kind of way. Relax, it'll be fine, I said, rummaging through my weekend bag, contemplating the sartorial limitations of an anarchist penchant for black. I walked over to him, seated on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, and kissed his forehead. Just don't do anything stupid. Horton Plaza was packed by the time we arrived that evening. People everywhere carrying banners, pounding on overturned buckets, wearing bandanas, masks, even animal costumes. Music and laughter and talking, intersecting and colliding, rising and falling like sonic confetti. Everything was sparkling and alive. The music was infectious. I couldn't sit still. I walked around, trying to find my friends under masks and bandanas as volunteers handed out homemade noisemakers and chalk. It was like punk Mardi Gras. It could not be better. It could never be better. Imagine traffic stopping and going and stopping and going and stopping and still stopped, because now there are hundreds of bodies dancing to California Love in the middle of the intersection. Circling A's and rainbow chalk, banners waving, showers of glitter flying everywhere. A celebration in the middle of your commute. Now imagine that celebration coming straight for your car. We ran from the middle of the intersection straight onto traffic. People hit their horns, some in anger, some in support. I ran between the cars, dodging and dancing, waving, throwing glitter and writing slogans in chalk. Whose streets? Our streets! The music was blaring, drummers were drumming, and the chants were louder than ever. I felt electric, invincible. I didn't dare separate too much from the group, though. On either side of the crowd, scores of police stood, batons in hand, waiting. Several times throughout the demonstration, cops on motorcycles blazed through the crowd, forcing us to split into smaller throngs, or circled us when we stopped at intersections, preventing anyone from joining us or leaving. There were more than a few plainclothes police, a fact made painfully obvious by their decision to dress identically in beanies and plaid flannel, looking like extras from Dock Workers, the movie, as well as uniformed officers walking within the crowd itself, something I'd never seen done before at a demonstration. By this point, I'd been there an hour, far longer than I intended. I looked to my right where Joey had been walking, but he was gone. I panicked. I ran back through the crowd, asking anyone I knew if they'd seen Joey. Finally, I found him walking with two people I'd never met before. His hair was disheveled and his eyes continually scanned the crowd. I felt my stomach drop as I ran toward him. "Joey, where have you been? What happened?" "Listen to me." His voice was serious, stern. Some shit went down. A plainclothes cop tried to grab me, but I got pulled back by the crowd. "We're going to keep walking, and we're going to try and get to the car. These are my friends. They're going to try and help us get there. Here, take my cell phone. Listen. If something happens, if I get arrested, I want you to let go of my hand and walk away. Don't try to pull me. Don't try to resist. Just walk away, okay?" I gripped Joey's hand tightly. This was not how things were supposed to go at all. "Joey, shit, what happened? I don't understand. Just do what I say, all right?" "What did you do?" Joey turned away, mumbling into his bandana. "What?" "I threw glitter." "Wait, what?" I threw glitter at a cop, okay?" You've gotta be kidding me. Someone handed me a bottle of pink glitter, and I thought it'd be funny to throw it at a cop with a camera. You know, give his home movie a little pizzazz. Joey threw up spirit fingers, and his friends began to snicker. I was not amused. We continued to walk for an hour longer, trying to find the best time to remove ourselves. The police switched to the offensive at this point, however, and began infiltrating the crowd, on motorcycle and on foot, cutting people off mid-march. Several times I had to jump out of the way as an officer sped through on his bike. I chanced to look around. There were officers pointing at us. They wanted Joey. People began to leave in droves. Soon there were less than 30 people, and we had amassed a group of 12. "Okay, everyone, listen up." A young guy with blonde hair, another unknown friend of Joey's, began to speak. "We're going to make a donut around Joey and try to walk him to the car. Everyone circle him and hold on. Ready?" We crowded all around Joey, myself and another of his friends on the other side of him, arms linked to his. My heart was racing, but even now, I felt like we might actually make it home. Surely they were just trying to give him a scare. I mean, who would arrest someone for throwing glitter? As soon as we stepped from the street onto the curb, the police sprang into action. I remember hands reaching in and pulling us apart. People were running everywhere, screaming. I remember a cop's baton making contact with my chest, the feel of the concrete wall as they hit the side of Horton Plaza. "Move it. Are you fucking deaf, bitch? I said move it." This was the first time anyone, uniformed or not, had struck me, had spoken to me in this way. I was stunned. I froze. I felt his baton against the back of my neck, pushing me away. I looked behind me. I saw Joey, seated on the ground, hands behind his back, 2 officers looming over him. I saw another friend, hog-tied, an officer's knee on her back, pressing her into the ground, while another sprayed her face with pepper spray. There were officers everywhere, pushing participants away from the scene, barking orders I could scarcely hear, all the voices blending into one sonorous wave. It took me a moment to realize the loudest screams were coming from my mouth, a nonstop wail that was not my voice. "Stop, you fascist pigs. I hate you. Stop." The words came like a mantra, punctuated by racking sobs. Eventually, somebody led me away. We convened at Joey's house and began the long process of trying to find out who went to what jail. 3 people arrested, 2 men and 1 woman. There were whispers that Joey was being charged with a felony, assault on a police officer and resisting arrest. My neck and chest throbbed with a dull pain, and my head began to spin. People talked about organizing protests, finding lawyers, getting justice. This was an outrage, they said. We have to fight back. I hardly listened. That could be dealt with the next day. I slipped off to Joey's room quietly, a shower of red glitter falling from my head to the floor as I undressed. I got in bed, but as tired as I was, sleep would not come. All I could think of was Joey. Thank you.
Thanks, Yesenia. Last but certainly not least is Hannah Grunwald from May 2019, Oh Nostalgia.
So say we all.
Andrew Coleman rolls onto his stomach, propping himself up on his elbows. His back and shoulders are bare, a sheen of sweat glistening in the moonlight. I'm there too, lying on my side, tracing nonsense symbols into the curves of his back. I think I need to get a girlfriend, he says. I retract my hand. It hovers above his back like a mosquito. Oh, no offense, he says. I just think I need to find a girl to date, you know? We had been hooking up for almost 3 months now, seeing each other at least once a week. Yup, I say, pulling on my shirt. Damn it, inside out. Bro, we could still fuck around and stuff, he says. Yup, I say, buttoning my jeans. I said no offense, he says, finally standing, incredulous, his penis dangling and his tube socks still on. Yup, I say, shutting the door behind me. It's a decade later now. I'm happily married, but I find myself with a strange problem. I can't stop thinking about Andrew Coleman. Lately, no matter where I go, I see his face. At the mall, coming down the street, sitting at a bus stop. Andrew and I started talking again recently, and all of this might seem normal, except that my visions, my double takes, aren't of Andrew. The face that I keep seeing is that of his glorious labradoodle Newton. Oh, Newton, you perfectly smushable goon. Every time I see a dog with curly fur, I think of his long ears, his politely crossed paws, his deep and abiding disdain for his adopted brother Nacho. I see his giant sad eyes in beagles and mastiffs and Akitas, his floppy ears in basset hounds and Springer spaniels. Because these days, Andrew isn't sending dick pics. He's sending dog pics. And to be perfectly honest, Newton isn't my only paramour. In fact, recently I'm living vicariously through pictures of multiple ex-boyfriends' dogs. Maybe this was always the logical endpoint of technology. We thought that the infinite miracle of the internet would expand our minds beyond our mundane, earthbound horizons. The truth is, with a boundless universe of knowledge at our fingertips, the only thing we are really interested in, besides a cat and a guinea pig that are besties. I know. Is reliving our misspent childhoods. First, there's James Wright. James and I had been close in the age of AIM and MSN Messenger. Back when we were in middle school, my teenage friends used to stay up until 3 or 4 every night messaging. In those days, we might talk about love, or the shape of the universe, or whether the stars watch us back. We talked about the infinite and the finite. We talked about Sartre. We talked about Vonnegut. After all, hell really is other people. So it goes. James and I never met face-to-face in the first 2 years of our friendship. We spent hours every day learning each other's secret thoughts and ethical boundaries and intrinsic desires, yet we had never touched, never kissed, never laughed in the same space. When we did meet, it was a thoroughly sloppy mess. We knew almost nothing about each other's lives, but we felt like we knew everything about each other's minds. It was intoxicating. One night, I drove the 40 minutes to his house in the small hours of the morning. It was pouring rain, a small miracle in a state as dry as Utah, and the only light in the world came from battered orange bulbs flickering haphazardly in empty construction sites. I remember the sound of the windshield wipers. I remember his lips along my shoulder blade. And of course, I remember his dad catching us outside naked in the grass when we set off the motion detector lights in the yard. You haven't really been yelled at until you've had "damn kids" screamed at you in a Scottish accent by a middle-aged man wearing only his underwear. James is going through a divorce now. He says the only thing getting him through it is Dizzy, his floof of a husky with crystal blue eyes. She's so pure white that she tends to get lost in the snowdrifts that accumulate overnight in a Utah winter. James says the secret is to look for the dancing snow and to carry a good supply of dog bribes. Recently, James's beard, which he has been cultivating for almost 7 years with the care and devotion one might give to an aged bonsai tree, was demolished in a horrible accident. While trimming the edges, he was interrupted by a dizzy hug. I imagine him looking down in horror through 1/3 of a beard and 7 years of beard-based tan lines at Dizzy, upside down on the shower mat, her cybernetic eyes whispering seductively, "Belly rubs." I hooked up with James in high school with the goal of pissing off our mutual friend Eric Scott, who I secretly loved. Thank you. I count this as a rousing success. Because Eric didn't talk to me again for years and years. In fact, we only found each other again recently. Eric doesn't have a dog, but he does have a 5-year-old daughter, which is pretty much like a dog. But people judge you even harder when you leave them in the car while you run into the store for beer and Q-tips. The day I learned about his daughter, Maddie, I felt a shock that verged on panic. You assume when you leave someone's life that they'll stay static, waiting for you to come back, that when you find them again, neither of you will have changed. The beauty and the tension is that people don't change, but their circumstances do. I blinked, and Eric is a father. I looked away for a moment, and the boy I wrote poems about in my super secret 7th grade journal is suddenly holding a tiny blonde monster with eyes like his and a wicked smile that says, "Hug attack." Maddie has more delight in a line of ants on the sidewalk than I have had in all my life. I would be hard-pressed to decide whether I'd rather have a Dizzy hug or a Maddie hug, and in order to avoid making such perilous choices, and perhaps because I was starting to feel weird about sending so many messages to boys I had once loved that just said, "pick," with a winky face, I decided that one dumb action deserves another. And so I reached out to some of the boys I messed around with in college. Reaching out to Josh Patterson is an exercise in frustration. Even at our closest, our text-based communication has never been enlightening. Our relationship was born purely of the surreal and physical magic of the night. Josh and I used to run through the woods, skidding down slopes of scree, clutching at thistles and branches and tall grasses. We would swim naked in the creek, our bodies intertwining and coming apart soundlessly. He would do magic tricks. We founded a Bigfoot seeker society called Sasquatch. It's watching. Don't worry about it. We debated the ethical ramifications of cannibalism. The first time I told him that I loved him, he ghosted me. But 2 weeks later, with the eloquence of a scholar and the grace of a king, he texted, "Want a bone?" To my absolute shock, this time when I wrote to him, Josh not only texted me back, but told me all about his life. He moved to Philly with both his siblings. As children, they had planned to open a bowling alley. As adults, they are taking the much less whimsical approach of opening a dermatology practice. He says, only half facetiously, that he's looking forward to getting rich prescribing lotion for the rest of my life. Josh's companion for the last few years has been Jabba the Pup, his 130-pound Roddy. The pup is a monster of epic proportions, with jowls that leak drool in the driest of deserts. He is burly, and he is magnificent, and at any given moment he is backing up into your face for tushy scritches. I find the existence of the pup shocking. Here is something entirely new for me. A wild Josh appears, a whole intact person with a concrete life and a doggo existing even in daylight. And as for Andrew Coleman, the lax bro I hooked up with freshman year, do you remember him, penis dangler? He responded to my initial overtures with boundless enthusiasm. Andrew's living in New Hampshire these days with his wife and their two floofers, Newton and Nacho, who have absolutely no limit to their excitement. Every Saturday, from September through April, Andrew takes them skiing in the backcountry. They bound along, knocking one another into snowdrifts, Nacho carrying at all times his very special, most favoritist frisbee. The joy in Andrew's response was unexpected, but somehow comforting. He had thought of me in the time we were apart, and it had made him smile. The first night, we talked for hours about the crazy products his medical engineering startup is trying to produce, the jobs I'm trying to get if I ever finish up grad school. We traded wedding pictures. We didn't mention those narrow college beds with their vinyl-coated mattresses. We didn't mention how little and how much we had meant to each other. It's odd. I've spent the last few months showing off dogs I've never met to strangers as though they were my own. But I'm starting to wonder if in a way they are mine. I've had too many people in my life who only existed at night. People I was connected to by passion, by adventures, by psilocybin-induced epiphanies. Those feelings were real, but these days I want more. How much of my life have I spent trying to capture wisps of smoke in my caged hands? How many layers of people, how much of the fire beneath the smoke did I never bother to see? These dogs, these boys, men now, are gifts. They're becoming human to me. We're becoming, for the first time, friends. Somehow, I think happiness is always immediate, a gift of the present. Sadness, pain, fear, all stretch out in time. Fear of a future, regret for the past. But right now, in this moment, I'm happy. So, Newton, Dizzy, Nacho, Jabba, wanna bone?
That was Hannah Grunwald, everybody.
That was our last performer for the evening, Hannah Grunwald. Let's hear it for the rest of our performers, Laura Condi, Lisa Howe, Frank DiPalermo, and Yesenia Padilluh.
Our membership campaign is just around the corner. Don't wait to become a member. Click on the link below.
And next month's VAMP showcase is going to be Spirits. Woo! The submission deadline is this Sunday, September 27th. Please get your stories in. We want to hear from you.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.